Short solo episodes, they're useful because they remove pressure. You don't need to fill 45 minutes. You don't need to cover every part of the topic. You don't need to sound like you're giving a speech. You don't need to make a bunch of points. You only need to make one useful point. So that's easier to practice. When you're first starting out a podcast, I always recommend you need to do solo episodes. You need to do at least 3 to 5 solo episodes and get your podcast legs. I wrote an article about that on Podcasting Pro Tips. You need to get your podcasting legs. So I was going to read the article, but you know what? You go to the podcastingprotips.com and read the article. I'll leave it in the show notes. But for many hosts, the first goal should not be, I need to record a perfect solo episode, right? You're going to, stumble through it, make the mistakes, learn from it, get better at it. I went as a podcast guest on 3 different podcasts, and they weren't great. They weren't great, but I survived. But every time I got better and it got easier and easier, and eventually it's a new skill that you learn is being interviewed, being on camera, speaking on mic. So the first goal should just basically be, let's just complete a clean solo episode, a clean solo rep, like you're doing reps in the gym. So a rep means that you choose one point, you speak through it clearly, and you finish the recording without restarting from the beginning, right? Like, let me stop and restart, right? So that's a nice rep. It's a nice solo rep. Okay. So, and you take this in levels, right? Like, so your first rep, maybe it's like 3 to 5 minute idea rep, right? So this is a really low pressure episode format, giving like a useful tip. And when you want to practice speaking on a mic without overthinking the production, do a little 3 to 5 minute idea rep and just focus on one small point. And it might answer one question or explain one mistake or share one quick lesson. Maybe just give one practical reminder. So this type of 3 to 5 minute episode is useful for building comfort, right? It also works well for short form podcast content, right? You can use it for clips. You can use it for shorts, reels, maybe some email content, or, just post it on your socials. So, and by the way, this isn't a topic flow drill. When the topic flow drill, you pick a main point, 3 sub points, a story or recap, and a call to action. And the topic flow drill asks you to talk on each one of those for 5 to 7 minutes. So that's basically one rep, right? So you can use these little reps to just test new topic ideas or answer a question, grow your speaking skills so you can speak for 5 to 7 minutes on just one topic off script, just looking at your outline. You look at the point A and you practice talking about it. You can do this while you're walking the dog. You can do this while you're, driving your car or on the bus or the train or wherever, in the shower, or you just practice talk. I don't know if you want to do this on the bus or the train. You might sound like a crazy person. But you get that, you practice this so you grow this speaking skill where you can speak with authority for 5 to 7 minutes off script. Okay. So here's a little speaking structure. You just hook the problem, right? You get a little hook. We got we got the hook arc, right? We mapped out the hook arc. You can get that 7-point hook arc on our website, Podcasting Pro Tips. But you hook the problem, then you make a point, then you give an example, and you end with a takeaway. Okay, so here's an example. If you freeze when recording solo, the problem is probably not that you don't know enough. The problem is that you're trying to hold the entire episode in your head. Use a speaking map instead of a full script. All right, so there you go. That's enough for a little short rep idea. So now after you do the 3 to 5 minute rep, let's take it up to level 2. This is going to be the 5 to 10 minute teaching episode. Okay. So again, the 3 to 5 minute is just one little main point. Level 2 is the 5 to 10 minute teaching episode. So once you can record a short little idea rep, right? Level 1, move into a short teaching episode, 5 to 10 minutes. This episode is going to give you more room to explain the idea without making the episode too broad. So 5 to 10 minute solo episode, it's enough to teach one useful concept. You can explain the problem. You can give a little simple framework, right? You can provide an example and leave the listener with the next step, right? Like I just gave a simple framework here, right? Use this simple structure for a little 3 to 5 minute rep. Hook the problem, make a point, give an example, end with a takeaway, right? There you go. That's one little simple framework. Boom. You can teach that in 5 to 10 minutes. So this is one of the best little formats, these 5 to 10 minute teaching formats for business podcast, education podcast, coaching podcast. A lot of courses will just have a 5 to 10 minute little coaching module, right? So a coaching podcast and an authority building content, right? So boom, answering pain points, doing a little teaching, 5 to 10 minute level 2 rep. Okay. So the best uses for these is, again, you teach a clear lesson, you answer maybe a common question, you explain a little simple framework, break down a mistake, right? You share a process, and there you go. You create a useful episode without overproducing it. 5 to 10 minutes. Here's a little structure you can use for the 5 to 10 minute episode structure. You hook the listener, name a problem, teach the main idea, give an example, and then you tell the listener what to do next. So this format gives the episode enough shape to feel comfortable without needing a long script, right? Hook the listener, name the problem, teach the main idea, give an example, tell the listener what to do next. There you go. If you can talk 2 minutes on each one of those points, boom, you got your 10-minute episode right there. So now we're going to go to level 3 of your solo episode reps, right? Of getting better at recording solo episodes. So level 3 is the 10 to 15 minute framework episode, right? There you go. You got these great names for these, right? So a framework episode is useful when you want to teach a process, a system, a method. Maybe you go through a checklist or just like a point of view, right? So it's a little bit longer because the listener needs more context. You're not just sharing a quick tip. You're not explaining how something works. Framework episodes are strong authority builders because they show the audience how you think. They also help you turn your podcast into a library of useful intellectual property. Okay. So you can use these for teach a named method, like the topic flow drill, right? That's something that we teach at Podcasting Pro Tips, or the hook arc is another like framework that we teach there. So you can explain your method. You can break down a problem. Like I said, go through a checklist, right? Go through each point on the checklist. Usually checklists say, hey, did you do this? Did you do this? What do you think about this? And you can just go through each one of those. Boom, 15-minute episode. And, but you can also show how you solve something, right? Like, if that's part of, your lane where you need to do some problem solving. Right now, we're solving the problem. We're solving a problem right now, right? How do I do a solo episode, right? I don't like doing solo episodes. How do I get into podcasting? You should start with some solo episodes. You should grow some podcast legs. So we're solving that problem right now by going over these solo episode reps, right? Start with the 3 to 5, then do the 5 to 10 teaching one, right? Now do the 10 to 15 minute framework rep, right? So here's a little structure for your 10 to 15 minute structure. You open with the problem, right? Hey, I have a problem doing solo episodes. You explain why the usual approach fails, which is I did in the first part of this series. I kind of went through like why people have problems doing solo episodes. Then you introduce your framework. I introduced the topic flow drill, right? Which is a speaking structure, a speaking map, speak with authority while getting off script. Check it out in the show notes or on podcastingprotips.com. But then you walk through the different steps of that, right? So ours was, hook the listener, create a main point, create 3 sub points, then do a quick story, for example, and then a CTA. Boom, boom, boom. Talk for 5 to 7 minutes on each one of those points. You actually have a 30-minute episode right there. But I like the 5 to 10 minute episode too, where you talk on each one of those points for 2 minutes and you have a 10-minute episode. Okay. So you don't want to use this 10 to 15 minute framework as an excuse to cover everything. The episode should teach one method, not your entire body of work, right? It's just a one simple framework, right? All right. So let's take it up here. I think I've already, spoiler alert, talked about the 15 to 25 minute authority episode, but for a longer solo episode, it works best when the topic needs more depth, right? So this format, it can build trust. It gives listeners more time to say what you're thinking. It's, your voice and stories and judge. The average attention span, I don't know what it is right now, but last time I looked at it, which was just a couple months ago, was around 37 minutes, right? That's when you have the audience drop off. And I've read too where it's even around 20 minutes, right? So these little 15, 25 minute solo episodes, I think they're perfect, especially when you're providing value and giving nuggets. Do a little 15 to 25 minute solo episodes. I don't, unless you have like a real strong following. I've seen some of my former podcast clients. I'm not talking crap about my podcast clients, but I have seen you need to coach people, right? That's what this is about. We're coaching. We're becoming better right here. So I'll say, yes, I've seen some of my clients. They do these like 60-minute like solo podcast and they just start talking and rambling. And it's, it could have been could have been a 15-minute podcast. You know what I mean? Like, I think you'd probably get better retention if you broke it down. I'm rambling. So, the 15 to 25 minute, it's an authority episode. So let me give you some examples here. You can use this to build authority. You have a clear point of view, a strong structure, and you can have enough examples to keep the listener engaged. This is where you take the topic flow drill. Boom, you got a 35-minute episode. The best uses for this, you want to teach a deeper framework or just share a point of view, break down like a case study, right? Walk through like a complete process here, which I'm doing right now. I'm doing these solo episode reps, 3 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, 15 to 25 minutes, right? So you can use the topic flow drill definitely to get through this 15 to 25 minutes thing. So here we go. Level 1, practice finishing. The goal is to complete a short 3 to 5 minute episode without restarting from the beginning, right? Here's the recap. Right. If you haven't noticed right now, we're going to recap what we just talked about. So in your solo episode reps, level 1, practice what you finish. The goal is to finish without restarting. Level 2, your 5 to 10 minute episode, right? Uses you to practice clarity. This is where you talk about 5 things for 2 minutes each, and the goal is to explain one useful idea in a simple way, okay? The level 3 practice, this is your 10 to 15 minute framework episode. The goal is to guide the listener through a process or framework. And then the level 4 is your authority solo episode. This is a 15 to 25 minute episode. You can apply the topic flow drill, talk about 5 things for 5 minutes, and boom, you got a 25-minute episode. So you want to use these solo episodes rest to test your show language. You can test your opening lines. You can test the promises, your intro, right? You can test your intro, your outro. You can test your transition from segment or subpoint to subpoint. You can test maybe a self-sponsored segment, right? Like I threw in there, go get our topic flow drill and our free vault at Podcasting Pro Tips, link in the show notes, right? So you can practice throwing that in there, and your outro, your call to action, and your sign up. So this is the reason solo episodes are so useful for new hosts. They help you develop your podcast voice. You can hear what feels natural, what's stiff, what needs to be shorter, and what should become part of your regular show structure.